أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. We start in the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. We bear witness there is no deity worthy worship except Allah, praise and glory be to Him, and that Muhammad is the seal of messengers. He was sent as a mercy to all mankind. May peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, his family, his companions, and those who followed his path until the day of judgment. I greet you with greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all, dear brothers, dear sisters, dear viewers. This is Dr. Abdul Aziz, your host, and this is our program, the Arab Spring, with our guest, Abu Bashir, inshallah. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we welcome you because it's the first show in this Ramadan 1442. And of course, we are going for the second day today, alhamdulillah. Inshallah, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our fasting, our prayers, our supplication, and our good deeds, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Abu Bashir.
Alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Inshallah, how was your first and second day of Ramadan?
MashaAllah, Ramadan is always good. Ramadan is always kareem.
Alhamdulillah, generous, yes, mashallah. Inshallah, today I think this topic, we were waiting for it for a long time. And I think the intifada, what we saw, the uprising, started from the Holy Land. So therefore, we want to go and zoom on a very, I think it's a big challenge of the Muslim nation, is the Palestine and the occupation of Palestine as well. And of course, everyone knows about Palestine and the Holy Land and Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the third holiest mosque in Islam after the Mecca, the Kaaba, and the mosque of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And of course, it was part of the pilgrimage people used to go through Al-Aqsa Mosque before they go to Hajj as well, and the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But anyway, we will talk about Palestine before 1948, and then what happened after 1948, and maybe 1967 as well. And we may talk about present situation as it stands now. تفضل يا شيخ أبو بشير، جزاك الله خير.
جزاك الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. Palestine, all the Muslims call it the bleeding wound of the whole Muslim world. It has been bleeding for more than a century. The problem started from 1917 when the British occupied Palestine. They occupied it in 1916 or 1917, about that time. And then their foreign minister then, Balfour, promised to dedicate or to give as a present the whole of Palestine as a national homeland for the Jews throughout the world. And since then, problems started. Jews start coming to Palestine from where they were persecuted, that's in Germany, and where they were poor from Eastern Europe, and where they were didn't have a good time, or they're not received well by other nations. So it was a place for them to get out of the persecution that they have been in for a long time. And that's nothing to do with the Muslim world. The Muslim world never persecuted the Jews, never persecuted any minorities. We said this in earlier talks, I think. I have to mention it again, that we have been forbidden by our Prophet, peace be upon him, to persecute any minority, whether ethnic or religious. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, whoever harms a minority, he has harmed me. That's why there's no persecution of minorities in the Sunni world. I must admit that the Shia world, they have different perspective about this, and they do persecute minorities, but they're not following the Sunnah. The Muslims not only didn't persecute the Jews throughout the period of Islam, they found in the Muslim world a safe haven for them. When they were persecuted in Spain, the Khalifa at the time, Suleiman al-Qanuni and Salim before him, they were sending ships to pick up Muslims and Jews who were under the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisitions. So they were welcomed in North Africa because that's the nearest to Spain, as well as thousands of them, many thousands, made the journey to Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. But then some political reasons, the Jews met they formed an organization in the 19th century called the Zionists. And that Zionist organization had one of their meetings in about 1880 to discuss finding a homeland for the Jews. They had few alternatives. It wasn't that the Holy Land. It wasn't their number one, actually. They thought of going to New Zealand, Uganda, or Palestine. And they start working on those. This Herzl later on visited the Ottoman emperor at the time, or Sultan or Khalifa, Abdul Hamid al-Thani, and asked him if they would allow free immigration to the Jews into Palestine. Abdul Hamid al-Thani said, well, they'll become my majority and they will want to rule the land. So what you asking for me to give up Palestine for you? He said, yes, and I will pay off all the Ottoman Empire's debts, which were billions in that currency, whatever it was. He said, this is not my land to sell it. It's not my father's land to sell it. This is a land that Muslims paid for it by their own blood. It belongs to the whole Muslim world. It's not for sale. Well, then that Herzl and other Freemasons and other organization, nationalist, secularist organization in Turkey, made sure that that man was removed, that Khalifa, in 1908, and then the whole of Khilafah was demolished in 1924. And since then, it has been a painful experience for the Palestinians, really the poor guys. They were occupied by the British, right? Like not only them, all the surrounding areas, Jordan, Iraq, were occupied by the British, and Syria and Lebanon was occupied by or colonized by the French.
You know, Brother Aboshiri, you spoke about occupation, and people use a mandate.
Mandate.
Yes, mandate, British actually, mandate. What is the difference there?
Yes, the mandate means that at that time, in the beginning of the 20th century, the Western world met together and they formed what they called the League of Nations before the United Nations. Right? The League of Nations was like United Nations, but a bit more criminal. I can't tell which was more criminal than the other. So the League of Nations was really for the colonialist powers in the world, the powerful Western world at the time, to coordinate their sharing of the third world. So they used to give mandate, which means an official occupation by United Nations. That's what it means, really. That the United Nations approved the occupation of a country. So the administration of the country, which is this occupation, really, there's no difference. So they had mandate over the Gulf states, over Yemen, over Palestine. And then this League of Nations, I don't know which year, just I think after the Second World War was dissolved, and they replaced it with the United Nations.
Yes.
United Nations did not give mandates, they gave resolutions. So they gave very similar resolution in 1990 to occupy Iraq. It was a resolution, right? Which wasn't different from the mandate, because the Americans would not occupy Iraq without a resolution from the United Nations. So again, those big organizations, they do a little bit of cultural work, a little bit of charity work, but most of the time they serve the interest of the powerful ones, the ones who are in charge of it. So it's not a charity organization. It's not a peace organization. It's an organization that brings peace or war to the places that the superpowers agree to. That's it. Peace or war, but they do it official. And the reason that they do it official, that they don't fight each other in that part of the world. You see?
Yes.
So when there's a resolution, or in the past a mandate from United Nations, then France could not go and say, I want Palestine.
Yes.
Right? They've got a mandate from the League of Nations. And when United States and many allies attacked Iraq in 1991 or 1992, and then 2003, they had a resolution from the United Nations. So Russia and China, who voted for it, could not say, you can't do that. You understand? Because it's been agreed. The crime has been agreed by the big ones.
Yeah,
so
once they have a cake, they share the cake.
It's an agreed, it's just like a mafia, an agreed criminal act by the big ones. So when someone go and commit atrocities, as they did, they killed 1 million people in Iraq, when Americans, when they went there, Russia and China could not complain and could not interfere because they've signed the mandate or the resolution. Sorry, what did you want to say?
I said it's like, you have a big cake and they share it between them.
Yes, they share it. That's it. This is really the same with the League of Nations. They share it. And then, as I said, if they decide to bring peace, and when they usually decide to bring peace, when the Muslims about to win. In Bosnia, they were watching while the Bosnians that was in the 1990s were slaughtered, raped, deported, they stolen, literally stolen. 50,000 Muslim children, deported them to Russia, right? All this, the world was watching. And they said, we don't want to make a field killing by arming the Muslims to defend themselves. Then the Muslims start defending themselves somehow, and they start winning. Then the United Nations said, no, we got to have peace now, right? This is, see, now the same in Yemen. They've been watching the war for the past 6 years. Everybody's watching. Now the Yemeni National Army is winning. They want to bring peace suddenly. Everybody wants to bring peace to Yemen. Right? When the Sunni wants to win, they say a ceasefire. And the Sunnis are being killed. No, carry on. We have to sort this by negotiation.
Okay, go on, inshallah. We'll go back to Palestine.
Right, so we'll go back to Palestine now. Let me go through my PowerPoint that I prepared.
Yes, go.
Yeah. Share screen. Yes, as I said, this is the bleeding. Yes, the bleeding one, but it's not the only one, really. There's Kashmir, almost similar problem. Burma, the Uyghurs of China, and probably a few others as well in Africa, and that Muslims have been slaughtered and they have been denied self-defense. Now the Jews claim that Palestine was theirs before, and 4,000 years ago. I mean, these are lies, because 4,000 years ago, that was the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam.
Yes.
There wasn't a single Jew in the world, right? And then when Musa came, he didn't come to Palestine. He came to Egypt. And from Egypt, he took them to Sinai. He was still in Egypt, right? The only time that what we call the Israelites ruled Palestine was at the time of Dawood alayhi salam, that's mentioned in the Quran. From Dawood time, and then his son Sulaiman, and after him, under 250 years, and then the Persians came and occupied Palestine, and then the Greek, then the Romans. So out of the 4,000 years that they talk about, literally they only ruled Palestine for 300 years. Other than ruling Palestine, even when they ruled Palestine, it was full of Arabs at the time, before and after. After that, when the Roman occupied Palestine, the Jews dispersed throughout the world, and they went to many areas, among them were Europe. They start from that time going to Europe, to Rome, and then from Rome, they start moving on to other parts of Europe. So, okay, so anyway, but then when Islam came and liberated all what we call now the Arab world from the Roman occupiers or the Persian occupiers, that was in 633. For the past 1400 years, Palestine has been an Arab Muslim country with no one disputed this, right? Through the Crusades came not actually to take all of Palestine, also they took over more, but they came for religious reason. They said, didn't claim the land is theirs, but they came to save the Holy Cross, because they believe the cross that Jesus died on it was threatened, and the churches were threatened, which is not true. Anyway, they came, they caused havoc for 100 years, occupied Jerusalem for 100 years, occupied Lebanon and part of Syria and part of the Syrian coast, all of it, for 200 years, and then they left. But the Europeans, when they left, they never claimed after that Palestine is ours, right? So, okay, when the Mongols came, but everybody knew that for the past at least 2,000 years, Palestine has been an Arab land. Now, the Jews as well claim that they have been promised the promised land, the land in the Quran and then their Torah, their Bible. But the prophecies in both holy books are contradicting each other. According to the Quran, they will come to Palestine and they will be defeated and they will be removed. According to the Bible, they say that the Messiah will establish the kingdom of God. Now, this Messiah term is a very loose term, because the Christians are waiting for the Messiah,
yes,
and they think he will be Christian Messiah. And the Jews waiting for Messiah, for the same man, and they believe he is the Jewish Messiah. And then the Muslims believe in Messiah, Messiah coming as a Muslim one, right? But again, with different aims. While the Christian Messiah will establish the kingdom of God for the Christians, and those the Jews, they say it's for the Jews. The ultra-Orthodox Jews don't believe in the state of Israel. They say the Messiah will establish it. Why are we preparing the way for him? We're putting the cart before the horse. We should wait for him. That's why a lot of Jewish people in America, we see them with their hair locks and their black coats. They are anti-Israel.
Yes.
Not because they love the Arabs or feel sorry for the Arabs, because they say, we're not doing it according to the Bible. It's the Messiah who will do it, not us.
And they don't recognize the state of Israel.
Yes, because they say the Messiah will establish it, not us. We cannot prepare it for him. We're doing the wrong thing. Anyway, so this is as far as religious concern. Now, we as Muslims, we believe that Allah tell us about the Jews, that Allah said, we have dispersed them into separate communities. And here, those separate communities always have been protected by Muslims, but they were not protected by somebody else. Even now, Israel, they claim it to be, or Palestine, the national home for the Jews. Only 6 million out of 18 million Jews there, and the other 12 millions are dispersed throughout the land, right? So when the Quran says they will be dispersed again, yes, it's true. Those 6 million, one day will leave. As simple as this. Now, this is Abdul Hamid Thani, who rejected, that was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. He rejected all offers to give them Palestine. It cost him his throne, it cost him the Khilafah, but he kept his promise. He was man of honor, honorable man. He said, this is not my land to sell it. It's Muslims' land. Then other people were working with the Western people. I mean, we have here, this is the Sheriff of Mecca, and this is here in the middle here. Next to him on his left is Lawrence, what they call Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes.
An intelligence officer from the British Army who convinced the Sheriff of Hussein of Mecca. He was only the mayor of Mecca. That's what sheriff really. No political power or anything, just mayor of Mecca, the governor of Mecca. He convinced him, if you help us to remove the Ottoman from the Arab world, which means Arabia now, it wasn't called Saudi Arabia, Arabia, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq, will make you king over there. So that simple man believed him. So with a lot of gold coins, they recruited thousands of Bedouins who were hungry and poor, and they attacked the Ottomans and they threw them out of Arabia. And then after that, they divided them, as I said earlier, divided the areas that they cleared from the Turkish, divided between the British and the French. And this man said, where's the agreement? They said, oh, sorry, we had another agreement with the French. To reward him, they exiled him to Cyprus until he spent all of his life there till he died, right? But his sons, Faisal and Abdullah, said, well, what will you do with us? They'll say, we'll make you a small kingdom in Jordan for Abdullah, and you will be a figurehead, a king, but we'll rule Iraq. And they did that for the next 40 or 50 years. Well, this is the price of treason, right? This is Balfour, the one who made the declaration. He gave what he did not own to those who did not deserve Palestine. And not only that, when the British entered Jerusalem, they had a big meeting there, and they recited to everybody there that with the help of 100,000 soldiers from the British Empire, they were mainly Egyptians, by the way, but all the officers were British, that the Balfour Declaration declared from Jerusalem at the time. So the Muslims of Palestine now, they start seeing that immigrants coming from all over the world to Palestine, and the British who were ruling Palestine facilitating that and put them in camps, and they start training, military training. I mean, did they come to fight or come to live? So they straight away, as soon as they arrive, the British army would welcome them, put them in training camps, and start taking land from the Arabs and give it to them. And the Muslims there who were occupied by the British, and now they've got Jewish gangs as well fighting them. So started resisting, but the resistance was ineffective till a man from Hama in Syria called Izz al-Din al-Qassam. Izz al-Din al-Qassam, yeah, that's his full name, Muhammad Izz al-Din al-Qassam. His name is Izz al-Din Abdul Qadir ibn Mustafa ibn Yusuf ibn Muhammad al-Qassam, known as Izz al-Din al-Qassam. He organized the Palestinian into an effective resistance force. That was in 1934-35. And for the next 2 years, with very basic weapons, he gave the British and the Jews very hard time. And his movement spread throughout Palestine. But then the British were too powerful for him, somehow managed to gun him down and kill him. And because of this, Izz al-Din al-Qassam, 60, 70 years after Hamas, in memory of him, they named their rockets Al-Qassam rockets, right? But and then after that, from 1936, there was very big, he didn't die for nothing actually. In 1936, when he was killed, the whole Palestinians went into strike from north to south of Palestine. And they said, we will not have a Jewish land in our country. Then the Arab leaders, who were agents of the British and the French at the time, they met the representative of the first Intifada uprising. They met them in 1936, and they promised them if they stop their strike, they stop their resistance, they will make sure that Palestine will stay in their hands and the Jews will be there as minorities. Unfortunately, they believed the promises of the traitors, and they stopped their Intifada, which was one of the worst decisions in Islamic history.
Intifada is uprising, yeah?
Yes, they stopped it really because they believed the Arab leaders will save them, and they say, we'll send our armies to fight for you. So in 1967, or before that, the Jewish gangs, they were gangs, like one of the
Hagana, yes.
And the Organs.
Yes.
So there's 2 or 3 of them. What they used to terrify Muslims. They used to go to villages, gun many people, and throw the rest out of their land.
It's like the Deir Yassin 9 April 1948, and they commit the massacre and slaughter about 130.
Yeah, I'm saying, but before that, they were doing it for the past 10, 15 years.
Right.
They were taking, because they wanted to establish their own towns and cities. So they were going to villages. In 1948, they went for the cities. But before that, they were going to villages and terrorizing them, killing few people or killing many. And people had to move from one village to another, and non-stop really, till 1947 or 48. The British decided, by that time they knew that the Jewish gangs were strong enough to defend themselves, so they just left Palestine without giving any concern for the Arabs. All the United Nations or resolution for that at that time, that it should be divided between Arabs and the Jews, some certain ratio, and there should be protection for the Arabs because they were not unarmed. The British, they just left it as if they were visitors or they were guests. They just, by ships, they all moved away from Palestine and left the Jewish gangs who were well trained and well stocked with weapons. They started attacking cities and towns. The Arab armies, who were, again, none of them were free. The British, the Jordanian and the Iraqi armies, for example, were led by British generals. Can you imagine British generals leading Arab forces to fight to liberate Palestine? They just handed it over to Israel. So those generals, two generals, one from Iraq and one from Jordan. I know the Jordanian one, the general called Glob Basha. They sent the armies because they had to say something, to do something, the Arab countries. The Syrians sent an army. It was a useless army because they only got their independence from France 2 years ago. They didn't have, only had elementary guns, basic guns. And the Egyptian army as well was sent by another traitor, King Farouk, to fight. So everybody sent an army to say, we tried to save Palestine, but those armies were not prepared to fight. Anyway, coming back to the Jordanian and Iraqi armies, with the little weapons that they had, they started winning. They started beating the Jewish gangs. And then the orders came very clear, you have to withdraw to the borders that United Nations set up. They withdrew because the leader said, withdraw. The Egyptian army were beaten badly by the Jewish gangs because, again, they were not well-prepared army. They were just, at that time, they just give them the uniform, few weeks training, and just few weapons, and then go and fight.
And actually, there was an Algerian soldiers helping as well, and they, as you said, they were winning as well, and the whole thing turned around then. Yes,
when they start winning, as is with earlier, when the Muslims start winning, they go for ceasefire and they go for peace, right? So the Palestinians now, they had to leave their main cities, Haifa, Jaffa, even Gaza, Jerusalem, West Jerusalem. So they start leaving, and where to? To neighboring countries, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon. This picture here is from the Lebanese camp that's been there now for the past 70 years, the Palestinian Lebanese camp. This is one of the most tragic camps. The Syrian became worse after. But this place here, the Palestinians have been there for 70 years. They are not allowed to work as laborers. No work permit for them. They got to sit in the camp and just receive donations from United Nations. Anyone who's caught working will be called illegal worker, and he will be punished or imprisoned. 500,000 Palestinians had to sit in camps. They were tents, but with the passage of time, some of them managed to work illegally, etc. They built these horrible houses that you see. And this is a recent one, by the way, where you could see the picture of Yasser Arafat there. This is what they managed to do in the 70s because they wouldn't allow them, the Lebanese government. The Syrians, they put them in camps again. And on those camps, they allowed them to work actually, but those camps were used by the ruling Ba'ath party to recruit people to fight for them. So they were taking people from there fighting the Sunnis. The Alawis were taking from the Syrian Palestinian camps, people there, just this to them was a training camps to fight to defend Al-Assad, first his father and then the son. The only good place they had, to be honest, is Jordan. Jordan, they moved to refugee camps in the West Bank, because some of Palestine, about 30% of Palestine stayed with the Muslim hand, and 70% were taken over by the Jews. And then to Jordan. In Jordan, they gave them nationality. They were allowed to work. Some of them became ministers, prime ministers. And still there were some camps, but there were no restrictions on them leaving the camps and working. Right? But then there's other problems went up. So this is quickly, this is what happened to Palestine. This is what it was before 48. It was all an Arab country, at 100%.
Therefore, therefore you are talking, you are reading from the right to the left.
The left. From the left.
Yes.
Yeah. The cursor, it says 100%. The green, all this is in Palestine. Before 1948, it was all a Muslim land, Arab land. All right. There were Jewish minority in the whole of Palestine, Palestinian, numbering about few thousand compared to about 2 million Palestinians.
All right.
Right. But then by 1948, there were 500,000 Jewish refugees. Right.
Therefore, those have been migrating from East Europe
and Germany.
And Germany.
Yeah, they are coming and settling there.
Yes.
Right. And what they did, so between 48, before let's say that's 1920 to 1947, they have already cleared big chunks of Palestine. Could you see this? But this is here. This is the United Nations plan that the Arabs will have this part of Palestine, the green one, and the Jews will have the white areas.
Right.
Right. So what happened? That the 48 war, the Jews took much more than what the United Nations allocated for them. Look, they left this area here, even half of this area, but they took all this area in the north here, and they took 90% of the area in the south.
Therefore, that's after 1967 so-called war.
No, after 1948.
Yes, and I went to that one, yes.
No, this one is after 1948 war.
Right.
This one here, again, let's start from the left was all Arab land. 1947, this is the United Nations partition plan. That's what they agreed to give 44% of the land to the Arabs and 56% to the Jews. Right?
Because when you speak about Arabs, it includes Christian Arabs as well.
Well, they were only 5%, and they still are 5%, right? I mean, if I don't mention it, not disrespect, but they are only 5%, right? This was 95% Muslims. So, okay, but they had equal rights, wouldn't have a problem with them.
Yeah.
So coming back now to, so before 67 war, that's before 67, this is how much they occupied, more than what the United Nations allocated to them, right? You see the difference between how much they took land, and again, the more they take land, the more Palestinians have to leave the country, right? And then in 67 war, the Jordanian army lost control of this area, and the Egyptian lost control of this area, which is Gaza. This is called the West Bank, and this is called Gaza. And the Israelis moved in, and they ruled it. And when they ruled it, they started taking parts of the West Bank and making settlements. We'll come back to settlements, right? So out of the 100%, in the beginning of the 20th century, at the beginning of the 21st century, Palestinians only live on 15% of their land. And the rest of it, look how much, all these white areas now, this is just, and the settlements are growing. We'll come back to this.
Therefore, that they are occupying that place according to United Nations.
Well, no more United Nations, actually. What they're doing now, as I said, United Nations was, this United Nations plan.
Yes.
47. But the Jews ignore it totally. Now they're just helping themselves. There's nothing according to the United Nations. This is what if according to the United Nations, This is the first plan. Then United Nations in 1967, they made another plan. They said, okay, the Jews could have more of this. They could have this area here. That is resolution, I think, 252. But again, the Jews don't care about United Nations resolutions. They just kept on helping themselves. Even they knew that United Nations.
Therefore, they don't believe in two-state solution.
No, they don't believe in. They only believe in driving Palestinians out.
Okay.
Right. This is the wars that Arabs and Israelis had, and they lost all of them. The first one is from the day of occupation till 48, and then 40. As I said, it was uprising, mostly uprising, because they were occupied, disorganized, and had little to fight with. 48, when some Arab countries entered to fight, and they lost the 48 war. In 56, there was a war between Egypt and Israel. Again, they killed many Egyptians, but they had to withdraw because of the American warning. The Americans were a bit neutral till that time. Then they became pro-Jew Israelis all the time. 67, where all the Arab armies again were led by Arab nationalists in Syria, in Iraq, in Jordan, and mainly in Egypt. The Arab nationalists were a bunch of people that they think that Islam is no good to rule us, and we can do better job than them. So they promised us, the Arab nationalists, that they will liberate Palestine in 24 hours. Other reports say 48 hours. So they had the Arab nationalists who ruled the Arab world between 48 and 67, nearly 20 years, preparing themselves to fight. Now they had long time to prepare, 20 years. The Arab nationalists have been there all the time. They had long time to prepare, and with all their preparations, and promised to throw the Jews in the sea within 24 hours. They used to have annual military demonstrations in the main cities where they're showing us their tanks and their airplanes, right? Those Arab nationalists lost the 67 war in 6 days. Now, 6 days, they call it the 6-day war.
Oh, yes.
It's a bit misleading. It was 6 days on the Syrian front. It was 1 day in the Egyptian front. It was 2 days on the Jordanian front, right? So really, you better call it a 1-day war. But that's what the Arab nations could do, the best they could do. That's right. Then Egypt, now for the first time in their life, they started seriously preparing for war with the Israelis. They took them by surprise in 1973, Syria and Iraq and Egypt. They took the Israelis by surprise, and although they won the initial stages of the war, but there was still no match to the Jews because of the huge American supply. Then America had to send what they call an air bridge from America to Israel because they were losing badly. They were sending them airplanes, tanks painted in Israeli flags, thousands of them. Anyway, they just saved Israel in the last thread, really. At that time, their most renowned and famous general called General Dayan, the one who beat all the Arab forces in 67. He was the defense minister in 67 and the defense minister in 73, right? This Dayan, he was so pleased with his performance in 67 that he defeated 13 Arab armies in 6 days. In 73, when he was attacked by the Egyptians and the Syrians, he collapsed and he said, the project of Israel is over. We lost everything. They panicked so much. I remember in 1967, when he occupied Palestine, the West Bank is an interesting story. He went to a village, to a Palestinian village to visit it, protected by his forces. An old Palestinian man told him, we will beat you again. Don't worry, we will win. And then Dayan said, not in my lifetime. He was lying. It happened in his lifetime. They beat him in 73. Then young officers at the time, like Sharon and Perez and
Wiseman.
What's his name?
Wiseman.
No, not Wiseman, that was old one. No, young officers. Wiseman, yeah, Wiseman, true. They took over and they managed to beat the Egyptian army. And then, but because of the losses was so much for the Israelis, I mean, the 73 war, it was a stalemate, really. stalemate between winning or losing. The Israelis lost in that war so many that there wasn't an Israeli house that did not lose a member dead, captured, or injured. Right? This was a real war. The Israelis realized the Arabs have improved a lot. So 48, the difference between the Arabs and the Israeli armies was probably 90% difference. The Arabs only prepared 2%. In 1973, they were almost as good as the Israelis, if not better in some departments.
And the Arab army was supported by Russia.
Yes, I mean, Russia doesn't win the war for you, nor America win the war for the Israelis. It is supported, but the Russians did not fight with them. It was the standard. I mean, in 1973, I remember it very well. I was in England, and there was so much coverage for it that an Israeli pilot was captured by the Egyptians, and the Egyptians asked the pilot, "What happened to you? We can down you now easily. We couldn't in 67. Why is that?" He said, "Nothing happened to us. You have improved." Right? So the Israelis realized, right, that all of the Arabs lost the 73 war at the end, but if we keep fighting them, they are improving. Now there's no turning back. They know how to fight now. So what they did a peace treaty with Egypt and Syria. In that peace treaty, they gave Egypt all the land they lost, which is Sinai. Sinai bigger than Israel, by the way, bigger than Palestine, but in condition that to neutralize the army, right? So the Egyptian army since that day has become an extra security force, right? Only to protect the leaders, the system. That's what we can see, that, right? And they haven't neutralized the army. They gave them billion. I mean, America was now suddenly giving to an army who was reported by communism. The Russian was communist at that time. For the past 20 years, they start giving the Egyptian army $2 billion a year. Yeah. Can you imagine America spending $2 billion on the Egyptian army? What for? Not to fight Israel, but to corrupt the army. And they have managed. And this is what we can see, Sisi and the rest, and Mubarak and the similar people who are ruling Egypt. And all these Egyptian officers now, they are colonels and generals in the Egyptian army who are selling fish and vegetables on the street. That's the Egyptian army. And do you remember when we talk about Egypt, we saw the Egyptian army selling fruits and vegetables on the street. That's what the $2 billion a year did. $2 billion to corrupt the Egyptian army. It wasn't. There's no way America would give $2 billion for the Egyptians to arm themselves. With $2 billion for 1 year, it's enough to drive out Israel altogether. How about giving them for the past 30 years? Right? That's only there as a bribery to all the Egyptian officers, etc., and to infiltrate the army. And coming back to Palestine, this is one sign of what the Israelis have brought to the land, destroying houses and felling trees.
Uprooting olive trees.
An olive tree. We'll come back to the data, the statistics, how much damage they have done there. And they start building settlements. Yes. What is settlements really? Settlement usually means a small camp somewhere. This is not a settlement, this is a city, right? They're building cities in the West Bank.
On occupied, between brackets, territories.
Yeah, that's what they see. It's officially occupied territories, but they're building cities there, right? And these cities has got one advantage. I'll talk to it after. Look what they're building in the West Bank. They built, and all those areas now that they took from the West Bank, they're building cities. Now these cities there, some cities, some villages, but they're definitely not settlements. They got their own roads that the Palestinians cannot use, their own protection area, which is 10 times the area of the cities there or the town that they took. They confiscate Palestinian land and they make it cities like this, right?
And who is paying for this?
Who's paying for this, right? I mean, Israelis have never had a problem with financing any project. They control the Western power. The Western countries, they give them as, I mean, Germany still paying for the crimes of
compensation.
The Nazis, right? They're still paying billions. America is giving them a few billions every year. And when the billions that go to Israel go to strengthen the army and the occupation, and the billion that come to the Arab world to weaken the armies there. That's the difference. Now, I want to say something about this. I'm probably the only Arabs who like those settlements, to be honest. I really wish the Israelis built a few more of them. You know why? Because I can see these are future Palestinian houses. I'm sure within a few years, the Palestinians will move to these houses and they'll feel very comfortable. And this is, they will say, thank you for building these settlements. The more I see of these settlements, honestly, sometimes between me and myself, I say, this is for the refugees in Lebanon, the other one is for the refugees in Jordan, so, right? So they're building the West Bank for them. Thank you very much. And you'll have to go and find somewhere else to live, right? Okay. I know other Arabs don't agree with me, but I'm sure that these are big. Now, look here, these are the settlements. Look how many of them, right? And that's supposed to be...
Which color is the settlement?
The blue ones, the blue circles.
Yes, all right.
You could see settlements upon settlements upon settlements, right? Non-stop. Okay. Now, in addition to settlements, they are making walls. And they call them fences. That's not a fence, that's a wall. Now, if you could see behind at the top there, this is an Israeli settlement. Can you see it? Yeah?
Yes.
And this wall is not to protect the settlements. It's outside the settlements. This wall is a prison for Palestinian towns and cities. This is Palestinian here, not Jews. If there were Jews here, you say that to protect them from Palestinian suicide bombers and attacks. But the settlements are outside that, right? So this is actually this wall that they're building to ruin the Palestinian land and to make it impossible for a future state to survive, because every town is surrounded by a wall, right? And as well, actually, they do surround 1967 by another wall. Why? Because they are afraid one day the Arabs will still attack them. And Allah warned us about 1400 years ago that they will not fight you all except within fortified cities or from behind walls. Their violence among themselves is severe. You think they are united, but their hearts are diverse. That's because they are people who do not reason. They think that the walls will protect them. That's what Allah said. So they keep building walls. Now they have in Palestine 6 walls. One wall like these ones, huge walls, we're talking about many miles, between them and Egypt, one between them and Gaza, one between them and Syria, one between them and Lebanon. So they keep building walls because they knew no matter what they do, the Arabs will wake up like they did against the Crusades. After 200 years, we woke up and we drove them out. And they know that the Arabs and the Muslims don't give up. They knew that we're going to fight them. Every time there is a war between the Arabs and the Israelis, especially Gaza now, the only place that fight, every time there is a war, they've had 3 wars. In the 3 occasions, at the beginning of the war, 500,000 Israelis fled Palestine at the 3 wars. And that's only Hamas firing few rockets. Just imagine if everybody firing rockets from all over the place. So this, I'm saying, these settlements, plus what they built for us in Jaffa and things, I'll say thank you very much. They will have a nice place when you leave. Now, we have to talk about what happened on the other side, the Palestinian side. The Palestinian side lost faith in Arab armies after the 48 war, and slowly they started organizing themselves. And by 1965, this Yasser Arafat on the right here, in the middle is President Clinton, and Ishaq Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel in the 1980s. So 90s. So this Yasser Arafat, a Palestinian refugee who was living in Kuwait, he managed to get some of his friends, and they formed Al-Fatah organization to resist the Israeli occupation.
Right.
And they started their operation on the 1st of January 1965. And they were not very effective, I must give them that. But when 67 war came and the Arab armies lost so badly, 10 tens of thousands of people joined Al-Fatah, and they formed the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, that started giving trouble to Israel, real trouble to Israel. But again, they were Arab nationalists. I never trust Arab nationalists. Those Arab nationalists, they give in easily. That's the difference between them and Muslims, Islamic organizations. They give in easily. So Israel hit them very hard. The Americans promised them, we will apply United Nations rules. They made them meet in Oslo, and they made a peace that they signed it in America between Arab Israelis. But it was one-way peace. That the peace that the Palestinians will put down their weapons and the Israelis will not give up land or weapons. As
Therefore,
you can
they asked
see,
the Palestinians to give up resistance.
Resistance.
But, yes.
But the Israelis can fight back. And I
Right.
call it one-way peace. Look, the picture says it all. Yasser Arafat extended his hand to what's his name? Ishaq Rabin. And he's not sending he's not exchanging it. He's not sending he's not shaking hand.
He's
And
not
the Americans
watching.
are clapping. They said that's good enough. The Palestinians have given in, right? The Americans, that means the West clapping. Well done, Palestinians. You're giving up, and well done, Israelis, by not giving up. It's a one-way peace. The Arab nationalists fell for it again, right?
Therefore, the right of self-defense was given to Israel, but it was given to the Arabs, Palestinians.
Well, self-defense is a mild term. Not only self-defense, the right to attack as well.
Yes.
Right? You have a free hand, but they promised. So the Palestinians, not only that, they gave them part of the West Bank with small council administration to fight Hamas, because suddenly another Islamic organization, for the first time since Izzuddin Qassam, since 1936, in 1987, a new organization called the Hamas came along by this man. This is called Ahmed Yassin.
Hamas is standing for the movement, Islamic movement resistance or movement.
Yes, he formed it, Islamic Hamas, which means stand as the Islamic movement resistance. In 1987, they started throwing stones at the Israelis. While PLO, they had guns, missiles, etc. They shook hands. Those guys with their stones, they start winning.
That's what we call the first intifada there.
Sorry?
Intifada, stones, intifada.
The uprising.
With stones, uprising with stones.
Actually, although they were only throwing stones and the Israelis were breaking their bones, this Rabin was, and Beres were famous for saying, I've broken so many bones. They know how many bones they've broken of children. It was mainly run by children. But what the Palestinian, what the Intifada did, it for the first time, it made the world pro-Palestinians. The Jews controlled the media throughout the Western world. Everybody was pro-Israel. Suddenly, the whole world, not talking the politicians, was pro-Palestinians. Why you?
When usually we have to be, because I think we have to make a difference between, we spoke about Orthodox Jews are against Zionism. I think Zionism is in control.
Well, Zionist Jews, really. I mean, okay, yes. I'm not talking about the Jews outside Palestine.
As a religion, yes.
But now Palestine occupied by Zionist Jews who are 90% Jews or 99% Jews.
Yeah.
Right? So I want to talk about Jews but they want to call it Jewish state, not Zionist state.
Yes, they are using the religion as well.
I cannot be more sympathetic to them than they are sympathetic to themselves. They don't want to call it Zionists. We call them Zionists because we think by attacking Jews, we have been racist. Yes. But no, they want to establish Jewish state. Right? We did not attack them before they came there, and we're going to attack them as long as they are there. Right? So we're not saying we're going to kill the Jews throughout the world, but the Zionists in Palestine, they insist our state is a Jewish state. And some people tell us, don't call it Jewish, call it Zionist. But they call themselves Jews. What do you want me to call them?
Yes,
I've never met an Israeli who calls himself Zionist. Have you?
Yes, but most of the Zionists are not, most of them are agnostic. They don't believe in anything.
No, but But I never met a Zionist.
Yes, all right.
I mean, in Manchester, we meet Jews. They don't call themselves Zionists, and they are pro-Israel. In the parliament, the British parliament, all the Jews, the Jewish parliamentarians are pro-Israel. So what do you want us to call you? Zionist, Jewish, Israeli, British? Be honest about it. Right? I mean, it's about time we wake up. Those there, they want a Jewish state. So we are against a Jewish state. Right? That's what it is. It's our land. Anyways, this guy formed this, I know you disagree with me, but I
think Palestine, as you have spoke about the history, it's the land of all religions, you know. Therefore, it has never been overwhelmed. But I may point out to when Umar ibn Khattab, you know, the second caliph of the after the Prophet, peace be upon him, passed away and entered Jerusalem as a conqueror and everything. He established everything and he left the religion, you know, minorities are Christian and Jews, and has never, as I said, you said it and you have repeated many times, we cannot even touch them. We have no right to do, and we protect minorities, and we cannot discriminate against them because of their race, or their religion or language.
At the beginning of my talk, I said we've never persecuted Jews.
Yes. We protected them. We protected them as well. We protected them.
Anyway, so this Ahmad Yassin formed this organization that is different, Islamic organization, not a nationalist organization. And this is his army, which is better than all Arab armies. They fought Israel 3 times, and all they've been besieged in a big prison called Gaza. They cannot even water, they find it difficult to get hold of, right? And they still, by the help of Allah, managed to make an army that, although they have not beaten the Israelis, but the Israelis could not occupy 1 inch of their land in 3 major wars between 2010 and 2014, right? They call their missiles, they make their own homemade missiles, and the whole Arab world doesn't even manufacture bullets, right? And they call it Al-Qassam. Qassam, this is just a memory of that man, right? These missiles are making a lot of panic in Israel. They started with missiles that only 1 kilometer, the first missile range, and within about 6-7 years, they could reach Tel Aviv, some 75 kilometers. Right? And that is why Israel could not occupy Gaza. They've tried. They've tried many times, 3 times, 3 major wars. They killed thousands of civilians. They bombed hospitals, refugee camps, civilians, schools. But they didn't win a single war against the Palestinians, and they couldn't take 1 inch of Palestine, while they took hundreds of thousands of square miles from 21 Arab armies. Right? So this is one of the things they're doing in Gaza and non-stop everywhere. We came through this. Now, one or 2 things. So
you just have shown just a demolition of Palestinian houses, yeah? Yes,
that's in Gaza, as well as in each war they go to is demolishing as many houses as they can. The first one we saw were outside Gaza, that's in West Bank. Now, look at this here. This is the Central Park in New York. That's in New York.
Yes.
This is the city of New York, right? Why is this there? The Palestinians, they live on, most of them are farmers. That's what they get their income from, the products, the agriculture products.
Yes.
And the most important thing to them is the olives. It gives them oil and olives.
Olive trees.
Right? And the Israelis knew how dear these trees are to the Palestinians. They have uprooted so far 800,000 trees. And that is, according to some who made a calculation, this is 33 times the size of Central Park in America, as if making the Central Park in America, which is almost as big as a city, making it flat, right? The losses for the Palestinians has been from uprooting those trees or cutting them off, filling them is $12.3 million annually. That means 80,000 Palestinian families are affected. See the crimes. The crime is not only destroying homes, but again destroying their means of living.
And make their life very difficult. Therefore, they actually migrate from their land and everything.
Yeah, truly, a lot of them migrate to Europe. The easiest thing in the Arab world for a Palestinian to find a visa to a Western country. As soon as you go to any Western country embassy, if they know they're Palestinian, they give you the visa.
And then
yes. Now Palestinians watching while they're demolishing their homes, they could do nothing, can't they? This is the life. That's what I'm saying. People will not give up, will not forgive. If the Israelis think that the Palestinians going to forgive them and have peace with them, no. The Arab nationalists like Nasser, Arafat can give them peace treaties, but they cannot give them peace, right? In addition to all what we said, there is another problem for the Palestinians, and that's the checkpoints. The checkpoints means every 200 yards, an Israeli forces have to stop you and search you.
Checkpoints, are they in the red or in the black ones?
The black ones.
Right.
I don't know what's the red ones are the major cities in Palestine: Jenin, Nablus, Qalqilia, Ramallah, Bethlehem, Jerusalem. But the black ones, right? These are checkpoints. So to go from Jerusalem to Ramallah, which is about 30 miles, whichever way you go, there will be checkpoints, right? So when I think Obama's visited Palestine, or the one before him visited Palestine, the Israelis did not want to show him. He wanted to visit Ramallah and see Abu Mazen, the president of Palestinian so-called authorities.
Palestinian Authority, yes.
So he wanted to visit him. So they arranged for him, the Israelis, to go by helicopter from Ramallah, from Jerusalem to Ramallah. It's only about 30 miles. They didn't want him to see him and the press people with him to the checkpoints. So Allah sent so much rain, the airplane could not fly. So he had to go by road, and the journalists covered all these all these checkpoints, and they could see the checkpoints. So these are checkpoints, I said, to make Palestinians' life difficult. So at this checkpoint, that's what happens. They ask these Palestinian children, show me that you haven't got explosive under your clothes. The women wait one by one. So the children who go to school in 6 o'clock in the morning to arrive 9 o'clock in the school, because they have to go through checkpoints. That's to go to schools. Children have to go through checkpoints to go to schools. Women have to go through checkpoints to go to shopping. To go to hospitals, you have to checkpoints. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Palestinian women died at the checkpoints because they couldn't reach the hospital for delivery. Even at the hospital, there's door, or gate, there's a checkpoint. Look, the woman is dying, she wants to deliver. No, I'll have to get the okay for her from Tel Aviv, right? And people say to us, don't mention something bad about the Jews. Well, this is what the Jews are doing. Call them Israelis, call them whatever they want. That's what they're doing, right? And then there's another thing now. I mean, they've got really very vivid, not so vivid, very active, what you call it, they can, the Israelis can always improvise. What they do, when they go to the West Bank, the Palestinians attack them with stones. So they put shields, human shields, Palestinian children or adults on their jeeps and military vehicles, so the Palestinians will not storm it. This is how low they are, right? They're so afraid of Palestinian stones, although they've got guns and machine guns, but then they put Palestinians to protect them. And then children as young as 7 years old, they imprison them. They take them for interrogations. So many of these children, right? Before we come into this one, right? So this children, again, thousands. In the past 2-3 years, under about 10 years old, 157 Palestinian children have been detained. What for? They said, oh, they're resisting occupation, right? And then now new things that came under calamity came to Palestine, that more Arab nationalists, like the Emirates and Bahrain, signed peace treaty with the Israelis, and they call it normalization of relationship, right? But anyway, all these treaties, Israel has now peace treaty with Bahrain, with Egypt, with Jordan, with Morocco, and with the Emirates. All those treaties are with the governments, not with the people.
Mm.
The
and Syria.
No, not Syria. They don't have peace treaty with Syria.
Yes, okay, because of the Golan occupied the Golan Heights.
They have not peace treaty. They had ceasefire with Syria.
All right, okay.
No, peace treaty where you have ambassadors, etc., relationship, but it's not with the people. Like Israelis, they've had peace treaty with Jordan for the past 25 years now, 27 years, and peace treaty with Egypt, that's about 40 years old. But no Israelis can walk in the street of Cairo or in the street of Amman. They need protection. While Americans, British, ordinary Jews, not Israelis, can walk in any Arab cities and nobody will harm them. Right? Buddhists, anybody come to Arab countries, they always find the Arabs welcome. But the Israelis, because they have not made peace with the people, they only made peace with the enemies of the people, and that's the Arab leaders, as we talk about the Arab Spring, is to get rid of them. And these fools, the Israelis, they think that they are securing Israel by making peace with the wrong people. This is the wrong man to make peace with, because this man, he's the foreign minister of the Emirates, is not at peace with his own people. So it's a false peace. Let them make it. They're only fooling themselves. The peace, for example, America has got embassies in the Arab world. So is Britain. British officials or embassy officials, workers, whether British, American, Italians, they walk freely in the street. They live amongst the Arabs. They hire houses among the Arabs there, right? There is no fear for their security. Because we, as you said earlier, we don't have problem with the world. We don't have problems with the world. But those people have got problem with the Palestinians. In return, the Muslim world has not welcomed them, right? Two factors that are very promising for our fight with, I said we lost all the wars with Israel. We have, except the wars between them and Gaza. This is Israeli army fighting Hamas, right? Somehow they all took cover. All armies in the world take cover, isn't it? When you are being bombed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it. What's wrong with it is these signs. They with themselves out of fear. This is the army fighting.
They are young as well. They are, of course, young.
They're not young. They're not babies.
Yes,
these are not babies. Talking about young, they're not young. These are fully trained Israeli armies that defeated the Arab armies. They're not young. These people in their 30s and 40s. Don't say young. They don't look like children. They need nappies because when the Palestinians fire at them, they wet themselves. So this is one hope for us, because they don't have a just cause. We will defeat them, right? And this is the other hope. That this little Palestinian girl, that probably her grandfather or great-grandfather was in Palestine, she's got the key to the house. We are not giving up. That's what it is. We will not give up. We will get Palestine, all of it, 100%, and we will drive the Zionists, whatever you call them, the occupiers out. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بارك الله فيك brother Abu Bashir. جزاكم الله خير إن شاء الله. Thank you very much. Okay. Let me just go back. Inshallah, just I thank brother Abu Bashir for his illustration. Of course, he just gave what we call in French tour d'horizon, just around about the issue. Of course, people can go down for themselves and find more information to educate themselves about the issue. And of course, the idea is when you show that verse of the Quran about reason, people reasoning, that message is not just to the Palestinians, but as well to the Jews, wherever they are, and those who are supporting the Zionist state and their apartheid and racist regime. And we can go forever talking about, the apartheid and a colonizer, whatever. Of course, most of those Israeli have 2 or 3 passports. Their homes are in the East European countries, or in Spain, or in Germany, or in some places wherever they come from. And of course, the original Jews who were living with the Muslims and Christians in Palestine have been living there, and they have their history there, and they have never been persecuted by Muslims under the rule of Muslims. One issue which I want to speak about is, can you speak just about a few minutes about Al-Quds and Aqsa Mosque and everything?
Yes, Al-Aqsa Mosque, yes, okay, it's to us, to the Muslims, to the whole Muslims, not the Palestinians only. This is the third most holy shrine or mosque in the world. It's after the third one, after the Haram, the mosque in Mecca, the mosque in Medina, and this mosque in Jerusalem. It's from that place that the Prophet ﷺ made his ascension to heaven.
Yes.
And the Muslims, they're not going to give it up. The Jews they believe that this is theirs because Solomon built somewhere there, which is there's no proof of that historically. Or
his temple, yeah.
That they built, they had their own temple there. But there is, anyway, we don't go in history to thousands of years. If we go to that, we'll have to reestablish all the Red Indians, holy places in New York and everywhere else. So we cannot just go claim actually what they want. They want to take over Jerusalem, so the Muslims have no connection with Palestine altogether. And they keep attacking it. This is a Muslim mosque. They keep sending their settlers. They're beating up the Palestinians, and they throw at them tear gas. They prevent them from praying. But you see, I don't want to look at the dark side of this. I always look at the bright side as well as the dark side. You can't ignore one of them. One Israeli chief of police one day, a retired one, when they see those Western people, there's one thing good about them. That when they retire, the Western politicians, when they retire, they tell the truth. While they are in the office, they say what their boss wants them to hear.
Because of money and interest and everything. Yeah.
Yes, because they don't want to lose the job.
Yes.
Right? But once they retire, I mean, so many American presidents, British prime ministers, ex-ones, they say the truth about Palestine, but not when they are in office. Right? So this Israeli chief police, he said, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is the Muslims' atomic bomb. If we take it over, Muslims will attack us from all over the world. And that's why they have not taken it over. They know that. They're making life difficult for the Palestinians to go and pray there, but they have not. Militarily, they can't take it over within 1 hour. Because there's only about half a dozen guards who don't even have sticks with them. Just watchmen. They call them guards. Right? They don't allow them to defend it, because if they have even sticks, they'll attack the settlers. So there's watchmen there who just give warning that there's no thieves and no settlers coming, but that's it. Anyway, to occupy it, I mean, if they occupied about 500,000 square miles in 6 days, to occupy Al-Aqsa Mosque, it will take them half an hour. But they couldn't. They know this is the Muslim atomic bomb. Once they occupy it, it will be hell for them. They know this. They're trying to make life difficult for Muslims. That's the only thing they do. But to us, it's not only Al-Aqsa. To us, all of Palestine is ours. There's no two-state solutions. There's only one state solution, and that is Palestine. We lost Palestine, we will get back Palestine. They cannot have any area to live there. They don't belong there. They don't. They have to leave. Where they can, we don't care where they go. That's their problem. But they have to leave.
All right. Okay, Jazakumullah khair for that. I thank Brother Abu Bashir for his contribution. And I believe we gave one insight about Palestine. And of course, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. May Allah accept your fasting, your prayers, your supplication, and pray for your brothers, inshallah, in Palestine. Of course, they need a lot of help as well. If you can give in charity for the orphans and the widows and those people are in prison and those who need food and drink and for the education establishment to go for it and to protect the Aqsa as well. Please donate generously for them as well. And that's maybe the least you can do is by helping and supporting them as well by your donations as well and your supplications. We thank Abu Bashir as well. And until inshallah we meet again for another Arab Spring Horizon Tour d'Horizon as well. Inshallah we say جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك الله وبحمدك نشهد ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام. Okay, Brother Abdulaziz, I stopped the record. I think I stopped